Alright, so I took the Spitfire for another drive since the last video you saw, and it started doing the breaking up thing again, and got to my destination, parked, and then about an hour later, once it cooled down, drove back home and it was perfectly fine. So it really does seem like a temperature issue. Something's going on where it's sputtering, it's misfiring, and it wants to backfire the more I try to feed the throttle. Let's read the plugs. That's all we can do and move forward. So let's pull out the spark plugs and get a reading on them. Okay, all 4 plugs are out. And just taking a quick look at them. They're all pretty even except for this one. This is cylinder 2. This is definitely a whole lot richer than the other ones. And now, the reason that could be is, I think, based off of something I recently read, this Weber carb, even though they tell you to keep the jet sizes the same because there's an idle jet on this side and idle jet on the other side, they also recommend, or people recommend, to maybe put this one out more turns or in more turns. You know, stagger how many turns they have. That way they get the same amount of mixed fuel, because one bank isn't going to pull as much fuel as the other one. So it's just a matter of finding out which one is which. And I would assume the outer one, it's going to pull less, so we need to throw more in. So this inner one needs to be in a little bit. And that would explain why we're getting such a rich condition here. Now, just went through reading or watching a couple videos on how to read spark plugs. Right off the bat, we're seeing the discoloration on the threads coming down to just above halfway. So this plug would technically be a little too hot. We'd want a slightly colder plug, but that's not going to cause my rough running issue, my breaking up or anything like that. The other thing I do notice, so the black around the bottom thread here, this is all from just idling, and I did a lot of idling in that last video, so that would explain why it's all black. You know, it doesn't really tell us anything about how the engine was running. What we can look at is the ground strap up top. We can see the discoloration for the timing, and it actually stops just before the end of that porcelain tip. So the timing, this plug and all the other plugs actually show that this engine could go with a little more timing, maybe 2 degrees more timing. So I can play with that, give it a little bit more timing, but again, I don't think that's going to cause the issue. Again, with reading the plugs, we do see the black making its way up the ground strap. That again is another sign that it needs a little bit more timing to keep the soot and all that down there. So just from reading the plugs, we get an idea that number 2 is way too fat. Surprisingly, number 3 isn't as fat as number 2, but it definitely is pretty fat. Maybe that's because maybe number 2 has more compression than number 3, so it's drawing in more mixed fuel. Other than that, the plugs are okay. They're not screaming any real major issues. But while looking at these plugs, I noticed this little bend here on this rubber line for the fuel. It was kind of shifted over like that, so it's definitely moved, and that could cause a pinch in the line. You know, and then this is obviously not good for fuel injection. For a carburetor with low PSI, I would expect it to be okay, but it's pinching up here for sure. And if it's moving around, especially when you're giving torque on the engine and all that and driving around, that could be an issue. So I think my next plan of attack is to fix this. I'm going to put a new filter on. I do have a new filter, so I'm just going to throw that on. And then I want to get a new rubber hose and see if I can mount this better, because that isn't going to work. Alright, taking this for another drive. And it starts up like that now, so that's good at least, but it's got to drive as good as it starts. again. I mean, when I first got this, I had the confidence to take this anywhere. When I bought this car, it was my daily driver. So I just want to get it back there, and then eventually when I sell it, it will make a good car to someone else. But for the time being, I want to enjoy this car again, just like I did when I first got it a little over a year ago. Driving, and the temperature gauge is going to start moving as soon as I start going, because we're not that cool now, but let's get moving. Successfully made it home. It's still running great, and it feels like it has more power, which would make sense. We put more timing in it, we fixed the idle air mixture, and the engine seems a lot happier. That was a successful drive. Nothing more to say. Hopefully the next drives to come are just as successful, and just goes to show, if you don't have confidence, the only way you're going to get confidence is just overcome your fear. So just keep driving it, keep having at it, and keep working on it. Eventually you'll get it. Thank you for watching. Next one, we'll continue working on this, continue driving farther, and go further and further until we're really comfortable with this. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.